yours. Let's go through some of these stories in a bit more detail and those inside as well. Albie Amankona is a political commentator and co-founder of the group Conservatives Against Racism. Albie, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
OK, are you convinced, I guess, by the Prime Minister said we're going to bounce back?
I think the proof will be in the pudding, Rosie. The Prime Minister had an awful week last week with Lee Anderson defecting to the Reform Party and then the inability to handle Frank Hester's alleged racist comments against Diane Abbott. The inability to really handle that situation in the proper and correct way and just call the comments racist from the beginning, I think really damaged the Prime Minister. So the proof will be in the pudding. And I think it's quite clear that really Number 10 are trying to start the week with a bang and try and set the narrative of the news rather than being sort of a slave to the news, controlled by events, things out of their power that they can't seem to handle properly. But there is good economic news. You know, the economy is back in growth. Inflation has almost returned back to the Bank of England target of 2%. We have seen 1/3 of small boat crossings down. So the Prime Minister does have a good story to tell. He just needs to stop being blown off course by the poor handling of events like the Lee Anderson Islamophobic comments and Frank Hester's comments last week.
And so much of that is actually sort of the mishandling of communications strategies from individuals who are supporters of the Conservatives. It's sort of infighting or rows. And now the big conversation over the weekend is, could there be a new leader of the Conservatives? I mean, how does the Prime Minister stave that off?
Well, I think the Prime Minister staves that off by basically just acknowledging the fact that Penny Mordaunt has actually come out and said she's not interested in these stories at the moment, and there's no truth to it at all. So I think there's not really a serious challenge to the Prime Minister's leadership at the moment. But I think the danger for the Prime Minister is these conversations that people are happening. It is certainly a mood within the Conservative Party that people are thinking, well, Rishi Sunak was meant to be the man that was going to correct everything from the shambles of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak was meant to be the man to get us back soaring in the polls. That hasn't happened. I think the Conservative Party is polling pretty much as badly as Liz Truss was polling just after the mini-budget. So Rishi hasn't had the desired effect yet. But that's why it's important that he's not blown off course by mishandling events and he actually gets out there and tells the good story on the economy, the good story on stopping the boats, and the good story on inflation.
What story can Penny Mordaunt tell? I mean, looking at the front page of the Mail here, it says Sunak's allies rage at Penny. Mordaunt fails to quash rumours of a coup. Tory MPs spend the weekend plotting. How does Penny Mordaunt sort of carefully tread around this?
Well, I think she's actually carefully treaded around it already, Rosie, to be honest. I think it's pretty unfair for Rishi's allies in Number 10 to be fuming at Penny Mordaunt because she's not put enough distance between herself and the rumours that there was a meeting last week between Tory moderates and people on the right wing of the Conservative Party, basically where they proposed Penny Mordaunt as a new leader that could take the Conservative Party into the next general election. She has distanced herself from those rumours, so there's not really much more she can do. And I think actually what would be a lot more helpful is if the Conservative Parliamentary Party rallied around the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister sorted out his operation in Number 10, so errors like the error that was made last week doesn't happen again. So they can actually get out there and talk about the good story rather than having to talk about bad things like not being able to handle Frank Hester's racist comments properly.
Which have dominated the entire agenda last week, definitely. Many papers this morning have got photographs of Alexei Navalny's widow. Yesterday, of course, we heard from President Putin winning the landslide victory. I mean, exit polls suggested that he won 87.8% of the vote. Turnout about 75%. We've been hearing already a little bit this morning about sort of the atmosphere within Russia. Well, Putin said yesterday on state television that he wanted to thank Russians for their support and trust. I mean, this is a man, Albie, who now, for already 24 years, has just solidified his iron grip of that country, and there is very little that anyone can do about it.
It does increasingly look that way, Rosie. And I think actually what was the most shocking thing about the comments of Vladimir Putin most recently were actually the comments in response to Alexei Navalny's death. Putin said in response to a question, as for Navalny, this is Alexei Navalny, one of the opposition figures in Russia who died recently. He said, as for Navalny, yes, he passed away. That is a sad event. We have had other incidents when people in prison pass away. Has that not happened in the USA? Yes, it has, and more than once. So he's almost gaslighting not just the Russian people, but the world, because Alexei Navalny's death in prison, I think there's a lot of reason to suspect that there was some foul play there. So this is a man who not only is basically a dictator, but is now also bending the limits of the truth in order to solidify his power.
And then what you actually see is an incredible courage and the bravery of the people who decided to take part in that protest yesterday. But you kind of think there is only so much they can do within the bounds of relative safety to oppose President Putin.
Precisely. And this is the thing. Those people that are going out and protesting against Putin are so incredibly brave, because we do know about how authoritarian the Russian forces are when it comes to political dissent. They do not have the free and fair elections and the free and fair right to protest that we have in the United Kingdom, and thank God that we do. And I think it's good that people feel that they can protest, but it's also probably not the safest thing for them to be doing.
Yeah, of course. Lots of people turned up sort of en masse at 12 to support their ballot. That was what they were asked to do, or vote for any candidate except Putin. I mean, there were sort of 3 other people on the ballot, but they were in no means at all credible challengers at all, as we've sort of seen from the messaging we've had, the propaganda, I think we should call it, from the Kremlin overnight. Let's look at some other stories. Lighten the mood a little bit, shall we? At the front page of The Sun, all the rumour, that's going to be the end of it now, is it, Albie? We say, seen out with William at a farm. It is Kate's first public trip that should end all the web rumours. There has been a sighting of the Princess of Wales, not a photograph. I don't think that's going to be the end of the conspiracy, is it?
Well, first of all, can I just say, I think it is great news that the Princess of Wales is feeling well enough to go out shopping. I think the whole country is very concerned about Kate's health. Obviously, we got the announcement from Kensington Palace earlier on this year saying that the Princess of Wales was going to be out of action until after Easter because she was having abdominal surgery, where she stayed in hospital. I think it was almost 2 weeks she stayed in hospital after this operation. So it probably was quite a serious operation. So I think it is a good thing that we are hearing reports that Kate is out and about. Now, to answer your question about whether or not this is going to quash the rumours, no, I don't think this is going to quash the rumours. And I'm having a look at the story in The Sun now. There is a beautiful picture of the Princess of Wales on the front. And the way that it has been mocked up on this front page is as if the picture that we are seeing is the picture of Kate from over the weekend. And it's not. This is actually an old picture. So I think actually, yes, it's a good thing that the Princess of Wales is feeling better, but the fact that they still haven't released the original picture from that edited picture that was a disaster, PR disaster last week. There was that really grainy picture of the Princess of Wales being driven by her mother, Carol Middleton, that was really grainy, and you just sort of think, well, no one, not even the worst camera phone takes a picture that bad. So I do get a sense that the palace is going to have to do something to quash these rumours, because I don't think this Sun exclusive, as brilliant as it is going to quash those rumours.
Yeah, I think it was in the Sunday Times yesterday, they were reporting that it might not be until sort of after the school holidays, sort of 17th of April, because obviously they said the Princess of Wales would be sort of out of action doing public duties until after Easter, but it looks like after the school holidays, there may be a little while to wait. But of course, that PR disaster last week may change exactly the messaging and the communications that we get from Kensington Palace between now and then. Palaces. Tourism boom inside the Times this morning, and we're going to be speaking to the Association of Visitor Attractions a little bit later on in the programme. We've got this sort of annual list of where we're all going. Did you kind of, if there were places you went to last year, Albie, that would make the top list, where did you go?
Gosh, well, I mean, I was reading this article this morning, Rosie, and I just think I really need to get out more, because actually I've not been to many of these places in years. I was absolutely obsessed with the Natural History Museum and the Science Museum as a child, but as an adult, I can't say I've actually been to any of these places recently. But there is some good news in this article, not good news for art, but good news for castles, abbeys and zoos. It seems that immersive activities seem to be things that people want to be doing at the moment, rather than just looking at a static painting on a wall.
Art galleries are really falling out of favour for some reason.
And I think that reason is, Rosie, because people are so much more interested in interactive activities nowadays. You've got people looking at their smartphones all of the time, kids on TikTok, really interactive, addictive apps, which are interesting in a way that I think perhaps look to a child, perhaps looking at a painting on a wall of of a beautiful watercolour of a landscape just isn't. So we're seeing a return to normal from the COVID downs in various different sorts of activities, but the art sector has not returned back to the pre-COVID normal.
And talking about people where we're visiting, inside the Times, there is an extensive sort of piece about London's nightlife. Across the UK, there are only 851 nightclubs left, down from more than 3,000 20 years ago. There's been so much scrutiny over these sort of policies, and particularly the Mayor of London's nightlife czar, who's championing London's nightlife. Do you see London as this thriving place to go out, post 11 p.m. on a Friday?
No, I don't. I have to say, reading this article earlier on, I completely identified with the two, I think it was Italian students who visited London called Eleanor and Raquel, and they thought they could just go out in the evening, just like they do in Italy and in Southern Europe, where you can get a drink past 11 o'clock. There are all of these things to do. And they were shocked to find that actually in London, it was basically impossible to do anything after 11:30. And again, I think this is partially linked to the pandemic. We haven't seen a return to normal with London's nightlife. We haven't seen a return to normal with people going to the office 5 days a week. And that means if people aren't in their offices on a Friday, they're not going to be going out on a Friday night in the city centre, in those places where they work. So I think there is a hangover of COVID which is going on, which I'm not sure whether or not Sadiq Khan was the Mayor of London or whether or not there was a Conservative Mayor of London. They would really be able to do anything to stop that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Sadiq Khan's night czar, Amy Lamé, who was paid over £100,000 a year, is doing an absolutely terrible job. And I think that's totally illustrated by this article.
Well, definitely. Albie, thank you so much. Albie Amankona, political commentator and the co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism.